What's up, guys? Swift here. Today talking everything NFL draft with my guy, Adam Mason. We're going to cover pretty much everything we can and as fast as possible as we can because it's NFL draft week and there's no more time for it. It's time to talk about it. Adam, go ahead and say what's up. Welcome yourself and tell these people where they can find you.
Right there. Bear Down Sports. You guys know where I am. Adam Mason. There's nothing left to discuss. It's over. It's done with, right? It's done. Caleb Williams won. The rest is done. It's done.
Yep. I believe it's a done deal as far as the number one pick goes. Caleb Williams will be the first pick of the 2024 NFL draft and the next quarterback of the Chicago Bears. And I actually have a big video coming on that, so I'll go ahead and plug that tomorrow. This video is on Tuesday. You guys will see that on Wednesday. But today we're going to talk about other than Caleb Williams. We'll probably get into some Caleb Williams stuff because we will. But right now, I think the biggest focus is on pick 9. And I've actually been back and forth on what to do here. My favorite, my dream target right now is Rome Odunze. If that guy's on the board at pick 9, I want him. But I'm also coming to the realization that I think that might not be what Ryan Poles' plan is. With the depth at wide receiver in this draft and considering that we can still add a really talented player in round 3 on day 2, then I think they're going to go defensive line in the first round. I want to hear your thoughts on that and what guys you like at that position.
And we've everyone's beating it to death, and we're beating it to death. And the reality is, every day it changes. Every single freaking day it changes. And I'm trying to keep up. We're all trying to keep up. Literally 2 days ago, I released a video saying we're 100% taking defensive end in the first round, and we're trading back. And then the next day, yesterday, I released a video in the morning going over the different mock draft simulators and how every one of them has Rome Odunze there at number 9. So I did all 5 mock draft simulators, and every single one of them had Rome Odunze. And I said, F it, I'm wrong. We're taking Rome Odunze because if he's there, there's no way you can't take him. And then everyone says, we already have Keenan Allen. We already have DJ Moore. But everyone forgets we've got 1 year Keenan Allen, 2 year DJ Moore. And even if there's an extension done for Keenan Allen, having Caleb Williams come into the league with a high value target wide receiver to join with him for at least the first 5 years, there's value in that chemistry, the cohesion, building that bond with those two for 5+ years. That builds championships. So I don't know, man. I'm with you. I want Rome at 9. I love the farm boy work ethic mentality. I love him being there at the combine, the last one to leave with Caleb, sitting there doing the 3-cone drill because he was upset at himself. I mean, his RAS was almost perfect. The only thing that wasn't was the 3-cone. So he's sitting there, and it wasn't for show. It was genuine. Him sitting there working on that. I want Rome. I 100% want Rome. But I also want a defensive end. And I also want a tackle. I'm with you, man.
I also want JPJ, and that's probably the biggest thing. There's a lot of guys in this year's first round that I love, but I think when it comes down to it, my favorite, just like you, is Rome Odunze. If he's somehow there at 9, I don't care about needing another defensive end as bad. We're not going to fill every hole in this year's draft. That's just what it's going to be. But I can see a path where we take Rome Odunze, we get a developmental tackle or a defense on either an offensive tackle or a defensive tackle in round 3. You can get a Brandon Dorless or a Karen Omega DJ. And then the draft looks pretty good. You can still get something else in round 4, like a center. You can get a Hunter Norzad. And then you sign Unique Ngakoue. I know nobody would be excited by this. Everyone was disappointed by what he did last year. But he was getting better when Montez Sweat was here, and he just missed a couple sacks. I'll tell you what. For as far as
this is why I started. This is why I started my channel, because I was arguing in your chat rooms last year when everyone was wanting Yannick. I didn't want him even before we signed him. I was one of. Anyways, go ahead.
But as far as a 1-year Band-Aid, Band-Aid at the position to hold you over until next year's draft when defensive end is more talented. And we have a first rounder, 2 second rounders. We could end up with multiple thirds if Ian Cunningham leaves. So next year would be, in my opinion, a better time to address the defensive end. No, the reason I
But
say
we need
Unique
both.
Ngakoue is simply because we can't go into this year without another defensive end. We need something at the position. So if we don't end up drafting a defensive lineman, especially in the first round, then signing Unique probably makes sense and is something we most likely have to do just to get us through this year. And
Pull up
right
that
now,
deal
there's
right there.
not much out there other than him.
All right, so Yannick, I'm not in favor of at all. I mean, there's other guys out there that have not been signed that would be flyers, like Carl Lawson. We could take Carl Lawson and
I like Carl
do a
Lawson.
flyer on him. I get he's eternally injured, and that's a risk you take, but he's only going to be $2 or $3 million because of those injuries. Jacob Martin is Yannick Ngakoue. Can't say his name. So Jacob Martin is him. I mean, they're the exact same player, except Yannick has better moves. He's got better hand moves,
better production as well. I mean,
well, yes. I'm not saying there, but I'm saying for size and what they do, we've already got that. I want a new playmaker. I want someone that's built that we can bring in. So yeah, I get it. And if Rome's there, 100% take it. But I would still rather us pick up a defensive end later and forego offensive tackle. I know that sounds rough, but Braxton and Darnell Wright, and then we did sign 2 tackles this year to be able to fight for the swing tackle. We're not stuck with Larry Borum as our swing tackle. Matt Pryor and Jake Kierhan can both fight it out. Now, I get that they're bottom of the league, not as bad as Larry Borum, but bottom of the league swing tackles. So maybe I don't know, there's just so many holes to fill, which is why I think you're right. I think we are trading back no matter what. And I think the ideal scenario is if that fourth quarterback isn't off the board and 11, 12, and 13 are fighting to come up to 9, which would be obviously Minnesota, Denver, and Las Vegas are fighting to come up to 9. You know, I think they would try to go up to 8 or 7 even too. We're not the only ones that have the possibility of trading with those guys. But if we're sitting there and the fourth quarterback's not gone, that's the ideal scenario, because then they're going to overpay. Overpaying happens at the quarterback premium position, whereas other positions you might get a 3, 4, 5, 10% overpay. But quarterback, those guys might be battling it out, overpaying by 30 to 50%, which is what the Bears did when they came up for the same exact scenario. Fourth quarterback off the board, Justin Fields. Nobody expected him to drop to 11. Right now, you hear all this buzz about J.J. McCarthy, that he'll go in the top 5, top 6, top 7. So if he's sitting there and these teams want to fight it out for him, or if Drake May falls and someone took J.J. McCarthy earlier, and that fight for Drake May would be even higher. I mean, so that's the ideal scenario, because then we can get a second rounder out of it. Otherwise, it probably is, a drop back to 11, 12, or 13 in a third rounder. But if they're fighting for it, we could really get a second rounder out of this, which would be awesome to have Zach Frazier or, even heaven forbid, Jackson Powers Johnson fall into the second round.
Yeah, getting a second round pick would be beautiful. And that's what I think right now. I think it seems pretty obvious to me. What do you think the likelihood is that we trade down from 9? Because we both agree that if Odunze's there, he's pretty much a no-brainer for us. Maybe not for polls, but I would consider Odunze the no-brainer. Other than that, Joe Alt might be the other guy, but I don't think he falls. I think no way he gets past the Titans if he somehow gets past the Chargers. And same with Marv. He's not getting past the Cardinals. And if he does, he's not getting past the Giants after that. So I just think right now, when I look at the board, I think the chances are higher that J.J. McCarthy's probably gone and we end up just trading down a couple picks. But what do you think the chances are that we just trade down a couple picks here and then probably go defensive line? But I think we're going to move down from 9 and might not get a second rounder. I think we could even just go to 12 and get a third. But I still think that would be a great move. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, if it's not for quarterback trade up, there would probably be a third. We get a second, third rounder out of it. That's pretty equal on the trade value, dropping a couple spots. But remember, the only reason polls did is because it was one spot and they knew why the Eagles were coming up last year. According to fans, I think it's probably 90% that we're trading down. But according to Ryan Poles, I don't know if he will. He might take Jared Verse at 9 because he doesn't want anybody else to slip in and take his guy. So I don't know. We might be banking on this trade down. We might be filling it for us. And it makes sense logically. But if other teams in their draft rooms have their big boards with Jared Verse between 10 and 15, and we trade down to, say, 13 because we get the most value out of that, maybe we only trade down to 11, maybe we trade down to 12, and then somebody else comes up and trades up with the Jets and takes that defensive end out from under us, I don't know if Ryan Poles is the risk taker like that. Because if you remember last year, Darnell Wright was projected by most. Now, I think you and I both had him right there where we took him. But I think most people had him projected between 15 and 20. And you heard everyone saying, we should have traded back farther. We should have done the double trade. We should have. And everyone was saying that. But it's not reality with how Ryan Poles felt about Darnell Wright. Now, it's easy for us to look now and say, well, yeah, Darnell Wright fit, and he was perfect, and we're glad we took him at 10. But Ryan Poles might not trade back at all, and might – yeah, he might
take – down to how many players are on that he has blue chip right there in like the top 12 or whatever. I think so. It comes down to my question would be, if he does want to move back there, he would have to feel that Byron Murphy is an option as well. So I think that's what if he feels that, hey, I could take Verse or Byron Murphy or even Latu Latu if we trade back a few picks, then it makes it more realistic. Whereas if it's like you think and he's already zeroed in on Jared Verse and that's his guy, if Dallas Turner goes 8, he's probably not going to risk losing out on Jared Verse if that's pretty much the guy they want. And then, yeah, he would take him at 9.
I just think that's more of his MO because people were saying that last year. Well, if we didn't get Darnell Wright, we can get Peter Skoronski, or we can get Broderick Jones, or we can get – but that's not how he works. He zeroes in and he wants his guy. Like, I think he's really right now zoning in. And even if they don't have it right now, I think they're zoning in on who they want, and that's what this whole pods debate is, and that's what the whole – they've got the scout team and they've got everyone in their war room for a reason. Once they've got someone, they're going to figure out who they love. And then once you start loving that guy and you realize it's a reality at 9, you've got to be convinced you can still – I mean, if you love him, you've got to be convinced you can still get him at 11 or 12, and it's got to make sense. So if anything, maybe because the Jets are in win now mode, they've got Aaron Rodgers on a 1-year deal, maybe the same thing happens as last year. And the Jets say, hey, or the Bears say, hey, we're open to business with 9 just to play the game. And the Jets say, hey, we don't want anybody jumping ahead of us for a tackle. We really want this tackle. We need this tackle. We're in win now mode now. Or they want Brock Bowers or whoever. There's a couple of fits that could fit the Jets. We don't want anybody jumping ahead of us. We hear you're open. We'll give you our third. We'll give you our third to jump up one spot, and we'll lock it down. Okay, fine. And I can see Ryan Poles doing that in a heartbeat. But I don't know if he will jump down any farther. He might just pick his guy at 9 if it's not the Jets. I mean, it's all this stuff that we keep going through in our heads. But the reality is this is where it's draft days in just a couple days. I mean, it's here, and these are what their war rooms are going through.
I'm hoping that they see a couple of guys there that are options, and they don't just lock. As much as I like Jared Verse, I would be just as happy with Byron Murphy or Troy Fatanu, or even moving down a little bit further and getting a Brian Thomas Jr. or Chop Robinson or Jackson Powers Johnson. But you're probably not going to find an edge that fits as perfectly for what Eberflus and Poles are looking for, other than Dallas Turner and Jared Verse. So if Turner goes 8, I do think the likelihood that we stay right there at 9 and take Jared Verse. He is a guy that you'll see some mocks. A lot of mocks don't have Jared Verse going as high. I've even seen him going in the 20s in some mock drafts. But he's a guy who I think is a for sure top 15 pick, and he fits everything that Poles and Eberflus look for. When I narrowed it down last night, I had it down to Byron Murphy or Jared Verse, with Jared Verse being my most likely guy the Bears draft. Do you feel the same way, that right now he's the most likely option?
No, I don't.
Who do you think's the most likely for the Bears?
Latu. We don't agree on this.
You think he's like the most realistic? Like they're actually going to take him?
I think he fits the best, but I don't think, and I just don't know how much all this medical stuff you hear about, even with Albert Breer yesterday saying what he said about the 6 players on Twitter, or at least that came out from, who was it? Goat House put it out there that teams are concerned about Twitter. Yeah. Concerned about 6 players that he's on there. I mean, those medicals are there, but he's played. But to me, and I keep, we've had this debate between me and you. I think everyone kind of consensus feels that Jared Verse is in everyone's top 2. And then people differ on, does Dallas Turner fit more of a hybrid 3-4, 4-3, which is why I think it's perfect for Atlanta, because Atlanta runs that hybrid 3-4 that's, kind of a 4-3-2. So I think he's perfect for them. So I don't see them passing on him. They can shock me. They can shock everyone. Every year there's something that shocks us in the draft. There's going to be something that happens in the first round. So after that, you've got people that are, the biggest reason people don't say Latu Latu is his medicals, and you brought up the arms. I'm not as concerned about the arms, but, the Bears do have a clear history of their measurables. You referenced it as the A-list.
Well, there was 2 things for me. It's the arm length and his ability versus the run, which, while I don't think he's bad against the run, his ability to hold and set the edge and rush, I believe the Bears want a specific thing from their pass rushers. And that's not what Latu Latu brings to me. To me, he's a guy who is the best at chaining his moves together, comboing pass rush moves, and getting sacks. He's a guy who's going to put up numbers and get sacks. But what the Bears want is a guy that's going to grab their offensive tackle, contain the edge, and then push him and collapse the pocket. They want the guy who, most importantly, sets the edge and then uses power to collapse the pocket from the edges so they can get the rush from the interior, and it closes the lanes that the quarterbacks have to escape. They don't want a guy, and I think that's why last year, when you were watching our team in training camp, guys like Trevis Gibson and Terrell Lewis were better at what Latu Latu does. They were better at beating their tackles and getting to the quarterback. What they weren't as good at is setting the edge. And it also, when it feels like they just want, I try to say they want that specific rush plan with the edges containing and kind of playing like the contain on the edge. And then they want the pressure from the interior, and that limits the escapability of the quarterback. So if you have one of the defensive ends beating their guy and coming out, then the quarterback can step up and run, and it creates lanes for him. And I think when I watch the Bears defense, that's how you see the edges play. They're not always trying to beat their man. They're trying to collapse the pocket around the quarterback and kind of contain those rushing lanes. So to me, I don't know if Latu Latu is the best fit, but to me, he is easily the best pass rusher.
Okay, so what you just said references perfectly into what we were talking about with Byron Murphy and Gervon Dexter. So, to me, what was the issue with Gervon Dexter at Florida that everyone was talking about? When he came to the NFL, he wasn't producing his sacks, right?
He was
too high. Yeah,
when he was coming off the line, he was coached slow.
Yep. He was coached a different way.
Read and react.
Yep. Okay. So with what you just said, I can't disagree with what you're saying on the edge. Okay. And which is the biggest reason Yannick Ngakoue has no place on this team whatsoever. He doesn't set the edge worse than anybody else. So
that's why they might be happy with DeMarcus Walker.
Yeah, they are happy with DeMarcus Walker, but there's literally nothing behind those two, Sweat and Walker. So you've talked highly of Byron Murphy, that you're coming around to him, and I'm not opposed to him. My biggest thing is he is Gervon Dexter. I mean, you got their two Razes up here side by side. Their 40-yard dash almost identical. Their 20-yard split is identical. Vertical very similar. The only difference is Gervon Dexter is taller by 5 inches. He's taller and 13 pounds bigger because of that. But their arm length is almost identical. Everything about them is almost identical. When you listen to Montez Sweat on the Green Room podcast with Chris Long, and he was praising Gervon Dexter left and right. And we know Gervon Dexter really broke out at the end of the year. He had 4 sacks in the last 5 games. All of his sacks came in the last 5 games. So I've been opposed to Byron Murphy being the pick. We know Gervon Dexter had been playing different positions as players do. It's not just always set at one spot at over the nose or 3-tech or 5-tech or 7 or on the outside edge of the tackle. They're always playing different spots depending on the scheme and how they have to read and react. Is there a possibility of drafting Byron Murphy and kicking out Gervon Dexter to play defensive end a little bit more? Is that crazy talk?
I don't think so,
Convince
because I
me.
saw it more on tape last year than I thought. But also, I mean, it just gives you more versatility because I believe both of these guys, you just brought it up, they're kind of similar. Now, Byron Murphy's 5 inches shorter. So I see them as different players when it comes to leverage and how they play, but they both can do one thing that I love. They both are strong enough and have incredible anchors that they could step in for Andrew Billings and play that nose spot. But they're also perfect fits, either one of them, to be that 3 tech that Matt Eberflus is looking for. But they also offer that versatility where they can interchange, they can move around. You can mix in Zach Pickens. And like you just said, I saw it on tape last year, something I wasn't expecting. Gervon Dexter coming from the edge, and especially on third downs. That's a thing where, hey, you could have Gervon Dexter, Zach Pickens, Byron Murphy, Montez Sweat. That's a pretty disgusting third down group right there if Dexter can continue developing the way I believe he can. So I know you're not high on Murphy right now, and he's a guy. It's taken me pretty much all off season to come to this point because I from the get go, from day one of the off season, I was like, we're not, because a lot of people were in on Johnny Newton, and I was like, we're not taking a defensive tackle in the first round. We just drafted Gervon Dexter and Zach Pickens, and we re-signed Andrew Billings, but
Yep.
we let Justin Jones go. Smart move. We're not paying him that money. He wasn't worth it. And then Eberflus's comments are what really stick with me. He keeps bringing it up that he cares more about the pressure from the interior. And when I hear that, yeah, you're right. Dexter would be a perfect guy to go over there and set the edge and collapse the pocket on third down as an edge rusher, especially if you have a more two disruptive guys like Zach Pickens and Byron Murphy in the middle. So I think Byron Murphy is definitely up there. So why I had him number 2 on my list. Do you agree with that, or you still think who would you have after Jared Verse? Or actually, you said it wasn't Jared Verse. Sorry, you said Latu Latu. So let me give you my top 5 most likely. I have Verse, Byron Murphy, Dallas Turner, Latu Latu 4th, and then Jerzon Newton 5th. What are your top 5 when it comes to most likely picks for the Chicago Bears?
Yeah, I wouldn't even pick Jerzon Newton in the first round. I know that sounds crazy, but I really wouldn't. Latu Latu, then Jared Verse, then Chop Robinson, then Dallas Turner, then Byron Murphy. For me, those are the 5 defensive. And going back to that though, Zach Pickens.
Let me add one to that. How would you how high would you take Chop?
I would take Chop in the teens. I mean, a lot of people have him in the 20s, but I would take Chop in the teens.
I love Chop.
The potential for him, I just think he's untapped at this point. But when you watch his tape, like he looks like an NFL defensive end. He looks like someone that can set the edge. The thing with Chop that sticks out, he never misses tackles. And that's something hard at the NFL level to try to get people to do, is set the edge and be able to contain and get those tackles. You see the interior defensive linemen getting better missed tackle rates because, it's already contained. And when it's coming there, it's easier for them to get it. The outside edge is harder. They miss more there. But with Chop, I think his was ridiculous. It was like 7% missed tackles when most of your college defensive ends are between 20 and 30% missed tackle rate. His was by far the cleanest. He already has some of that NFL instinct down to be able to know where the runner's going, know where the play is headed. So I really like Chop more than most. Obviously, he was number 3 for me. He's ahead of Dallas Turner for me. I'm probably a little more biased because of you don't see a lot of tape with Dallas Turner's knuckles in the grass. You see him standing in position most of the time. Now, is that impossible to overcome? No. I mean, these guys have been playing ball their whole life. He's probably really good at it. I just haven't seen a lot of tape at it. And the Bears are clearly a 4-3 defense. So he's a little bit smaller, but in general, this defensive class is a little bit smaller at the edge position anyways. So
I feel the same way about Dallas Turner. I'm not as high on him as everyone else. It's not that I don't like Dallas Turner. I actually got him in a mock draft I did at the 32-man mock. I got him at pick 20 or 21, somewhere around there. And I actually saw PFF just released the mock yesterday, and they had him going 20th to the Steelers. And I was like, see, I'm not as high on him. I do think he's a first-round talent, but I think a lot of it is trait-based. He played at Alabama. A lot of those guys from Alabama are coached really well, and they're closer to their ceiling than most prospects. And as well, they're playing on a really good defense with a lot of good talent around him. It's not that I don't like Dallas Turner, but like you said, I'm not 100% sure that he can play defensive end yet. I haven't seen him do it. I'm not saying he can't, but playing 3-4 outside linebacker and defensive end, yes, most guys can do it pretty well, but we saw guys like Leonard Floyd and other guys who struggle at doing stuff like that. So to me, I like Jared Verse more, and I hope the Falcons take Dallas Turner. I think that'll make the decision easier for us at pick 9.
Yeah, I think he's the perfect fit for Atlanta, and if he doesn't go there, I'd have to scratch my brain to know where he's going to fit perfectly. But yeah, I think he goes to Atlanta, and I hope he goes to Atlanta, just like you said.
Well, while we're on Atlanta, what are your thoughts? I know we mentioned this before the show. What are your thoughts on the tampering? And do you think, because I think it'd be crazy if the NFL decided just a day or two before the draft to take away a team's first-round pick. I think they'd probably do it for next year, but considering the rumors are they want to resolve it this week, I wouldn't rule out that the NFL, if they know that they tampered, like some of the rumors are, didn't come out and snatch that pick number 8 from them. Do you think that's realistic? There's any chance?
Before today, I would have said no. Before yesterday, I would have said no. It's clear they tampered. I mean, Kirk Cousins bought his house in Atlanta before tampering period was even open. So the fact that that's as clear and obvious as it gets. Now, here's the reason I think it'll probably come down. I think they might have their second-round pick taken away, which kind of sucks for the Bears. But at the same time, it moves us up from 75 to 74. But the reason it could happen, and I don't know at this point, but the reason it could is you saw it just barely happen. You saw Miami lose multiple picks because of their tampering. You see the league wanting to send messages with stuff like that. So it's right there, right now. Hey, guys, don't tamper anymore. And then this year, there's 2 cases, clear and obvious. Now, I don't know how much proof is on the Saquon one, but from what I'm hearing, it's pretty obvious as well. But the Atlanta one, and that's a premium position, quarterback, you want to send a message. This is year to send it to say, teams, we're not effing around. You no more. We're done. Atlanta, you lose your first. That would send a clear message. Now,
the only problem with that is that means that Dallas Turner definitely falls to us, and he's the one guy I probably don't really want to. I wouldn't be mad. I got to preface this because I think Dallas Turner, he has a lot of similarities to Will Anderson last year, and if he's close to the prospect Will Anderson was, then hey, that's an A+. But so far, other than him taking Will Anderson's spot and having kind of similar measurables and playing on the same defense, he's not Will Anderson to me. He's just not. And I'd rather have Jared Verse.
Yeah. I don't know if it's a bad problem to have, though. Maybe there's a team that I don't know. It only raises
another team could want him. Yeah, true.
It only raises our salary cap a little bit to be at 8, but it increases the trade value as well to go from 8 down. I don't know. I don't know the answer to that one, but I hope they do. I hope they do slap him on the wrist and take a pick away. If there's ever a year to do it, this is the year to send a message. That's all I know. Is they've made it clear with Miami, teams don't do this anymore because we know it's happening. We know everyone's doing it. You're trying to get the competitive edge. You're trying to get the advantage. Everyone's doing it. But when it's this clear and obvious, when you're signing that quick, it actually makes me wonder if the Bears had any contact with Swift before.
Listen, I'm going to come out on the record of this, okay? As a Swift, okay? The Bears talk to me because I'm Swift. And, I probably just portrayed that to DeAndre.
So they talk to you and they talk to Taylor Swift?
Mm-hmm. They talked to Taylor Swift and me Swift, but they didn't talk to DeAndre. So if NFL, if you're looking, Bears don't tamper, okay? They just got the deal done swiftly, okay? That's all there was to it. I'm out on
Well,
that.
I haven't heard anything negative. It sounds like we just reached out right off the bat, and he was a focus for us. But he was one of the very first signings of this offseason. But
he was. So we're not talking NFL. Don't pay attention to that. Okay, that was all done. Ryan Poles just works very swiftly. But if the Falcons did lose that pick, I don't think it would change too much, unless one of those guys that we didn't expect to be there, if Rome Odunze or Malik Neighbors is on the board, there's still a chance. I still, and this is something I've tried to tell people, that if Odunze did make it to 8, the Falcons could very well take him. Like, I know they need a defensive end, but they could be like, Rome Odunze is here. Why would we not want Drake London, Rome Odunze, and Darnell Mooney to go with Kirk Cousins? Like, so that's where, hey, that takes that out of the equation. That would be the big plus for me. But other than that, there's not much to it. So we'll move on. Let's move away from pick 9. What are your thoughts on pick 75? Obviously, a lot of it comes down to what the heck do we do with pick 9? But after that, it's what happens at pick 75 and 122.
Even then, as you go through, as you and I and everyone watching and everyone and their dog has done, we've gone through 50 billion mock draft simulators at this point. And to me, I don't care the position anymore at 75. At 122, if we haven't taken a wide receiver, I want us to take one. I want us to take Taj Washington or someone in there that's the best available, because this is a deep wide receiver class. And a 4th rounder this year is probably better than a Tyler Scott last year. It should be better than a Velus Jones. A 4th rounder this year should be the equivalent of a fringe 2nd, 3rd rounder in normal years. So, you know, if Jacob Cowing is I've seen stuff where Jacob Cowing is now falling to the 4th round, snag him up. But at 75, my opinion at this point, you take the absolute best player available on the offensive side of the ball. Unless we haven't taken a defensive end, then we could do that. But on the offensive side, whether that's tackle, whether it's Kieran Abenjabi, whether
these are my top 100 rankings real quick, just for, or not really rankings, but just players that are listed in the top 100 at different positions.
I like it. Even if Christian Haynes falls, if Patrick Paul for some crazy reason fell, best player available to me at 75. That's what I want, because there's some players that should fall into the 3rd round that wouldn't normally be there in this draft, and then we're going to have the drop after day 2. So I'm not really stuck on one player. I've had different things falling on my mocks with Braden Fisk, with
Fisk would be nice, yeah.
I don't see him falling that far, but if he did, that would be crazy.
That's the thing. Someone's got to fall. When you look at this is where there's going to be a run on a position. Now, I didn't even include cornerbacks in here, but cornerback is another position that's pretty stacked, and we don't need a corner. So I'm rooting for as many cornerbacks to get drafted in the first 75 picks as possible. That's something I haven't talked about much.
Class too.
Yeah, it's a great corner class. So if corners and there's a wide receiver run, and then you know that at least 7 or 8 tackles are going to go in the first 30 to 40 picks, then someone somewhere on this list that shouldn't fall, whether it's crazy thought Zach Frazier, probably not, Christian Haynes, a Braden Fisk, or even at wide receiver and Xavier Legette. I think somebody we don't expect to be there is going to fall. Go ahead.
Look at those tackles right there. And Ryan Poles at the combine made the specific comment, it's a deep tackle class.
Yes,
he wasn't talking about taking a tackle at the top of the draft, but look at all those guys: Joe Alt, Troy Fontenot, Talise Fuaga, Olu Fashanu, J.C. Latham, Tyler Guyton, Maris Mims, Jordan Morgan, Patrick Paul, Kingsley, all those top, what is that, 12 that I listed up? Those guys are all projected right now to be in the top 35-ish, 40-ish. And then you've got Kieran is kind of the cutoff where it goes down to the 3rd round. If some of those guys fall, because this is a deep corner class. This is a deep wide receiver class, solid defensive tackle at the top class.
And then the edges are going to go fast too. At least,
especially at the top, because people know there's a gap right there between, on your list here, probably Darius Robinson and Adisa Isaac.
Mhm.
Some of these guys are starting to separate themselves. I thought Adisa Isaac was a second rounder, but then Marshawn Nealon's getting all the attention right now. People talking about him, people reaching into the second round to get him. Chris Braswell's had attention at different times. Jonah Ellis has been anywhere from the second to fourth round. Austin Booker is, everyone's talking about him, that
I
he's
like Booker.
got all the talent, but just needs a little more refinement. So does
And
the
I think
team
this is
reach
a
up?
sweet spot for defensive tackle too. When you look at the interior defensive line, if we don't go Byron Murphy or Jerzon Newton, guys that are going, I think Darius Robinson obviously is going to be gone, and Chris Jenkins is most likely gone, and Braden Fisk and Ruka Roro most likely are gone. But one of those guys could fall. But if not, we still have the options of Brandon Dorless, Mike Hall Jr., Mason Smith, and Gabe Hall. I really like the depth at that position. And it obviously falls off a lot faster than wide receiver, just like every other position other than cornerback. But are there any guys when you're looking here, do you feel the same way about defensive tackle, or what position do you think is just going to go ahead?
Rukaroro is someone that I have in my second round, and I'm shocked that other people have him late second to third round. If he dropped somehow, because you're seeing him dropping into the 70s in some of these simulators. And then the one that still boggles my mind, I put him in so many of my mock drafts before we were mocking. I did that in January. Mason Smith, if you don't remember last year, he was projected first rounder.
First round guy, yeah.
He was projected, and there's no reason for him not to be. He literally had 0 missed tackles this year. None. So you talk about pressures on the offensive side. For an interior big guy, I mean, Mason Smith is huge. He's like a Billings for us. Mason Smith didn't miss a single tackle all year. He's a beast presence. He plugs holes. He plugs the pocket, and he makes it so those defenders for the outside edges can get in and do their job, because it works in tandem. It's not just about the edges closing the pocket. It's about the defensive front there, the 3-tech and the nose tackle, clogging things up in the middle to make it hard there too. So I love both. I mean, Ruka Rojo, Braden Fisk, Mason Smith. Mike Hall is even kind of undervalued. You see him dropping in the 4th in some of these. Hall,
I think he's a guy who could go second. I think he's going to go higher than they have him listed. I'm really high on him. He was awesome at the Senior Bowl, but that just shows the depth at that position too. And I think it comes down, it's that and wide receiver. And when we're looking in the third round, I think tackle, they're all going to be gone, and edge rusher will most likely be wiped out as well. The one tackle is Kieran Omegadiji. He's the only one I think could really fall to 75, and that's becoming unlikely too, because once you get rid of the other tackles, like all it takes is one team to take a tackle before 75. I think we might have to trade up if he's the guy. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, you're going to have your run on corners at this position too, and safeties. I mean, it's not like, and then the top of this draft with linebackers isn't bad. We just don't need linebackers. So there's a lot of picks between 1 and 75, and there's needs teams have, and it's not all sitting right here with the same needs the Bears have. What's going to be interesting is to watch how these wide receivers come off the board.
And I think that's what we should root for, is not wide receivers to come off the board, but cornerbacks. Every time one of those gets drafted, a quarterback. After we take Caleb, hey, root for a run on quarterbacks. I mean, obviously we're going to get the top 4, but let's also hope that Bo Nix and Michael Penix Jr. get drafted before 75, definitely in the first 2 rounds, and that'll help us out a little bit as well. And then corners, if a running back goes early, hey, thanks, because we're not taking one. And corners, hey, take all those corners. But when I look at this list, like, there's just a lot of guys that are still going to be there at 75. The more I do the numbers in my head, when you do mock drafts, a lot of them are just silly on those simulators, but you can put together your list of the top 75 players in this draft, and when you get there, there's still going to be 10 to 15 guys you really like for that 75 pick option. And that's what I'm coming down to. Do you agree with that? Or
I 100% agree with that. We're not in bad shape at 75 at all. In fact, I'm going to do this for fun. I'm going to pull up a simulator just on my phone, and I'm going to give you options, just me and you here. At 75, you tell me what you would do. Here's our options at 75. See, and this could happen. Oh, okay. Here's your options. Now what are you going to do? Jalen Polk fell, wide receiver. And that could happen because there's so many wide receivers, you could have one of them fall. So your options here at 75, Swifty. Jalen Polk, Washington wide receiver. Braylon Trice, edge out of Washington. Braden Fisk, defensive tackle from Florida State. Marshawn Nealand, edge out of Western Michigan. Christian Mahogany, guard out of Boston College. There's your options. What are you going to do?
Who are the edges again? And D line?
Braylon Trice, Braden Fisk, and Marshawn Nealand. See, I think at 75, we're going to be fine. We're going to have options.
I'm probably between Fisk and Nealand. That's where I say somebody's going to fall. Obviously, when I was looking at the list and you name them all, once the draft is over, most of the guys aren't going to fall. But if you run the draft, if the draft really would have happened 100 times, like we do in the simulators, 1 or 2 times, a lot of these guys are going to fall. And at that pick, I'd probably go with Braden Fisk or Marshawn Nealand, depending on what we did in the first round. But I really like Fisk. I'm high on that dude. But that's my thought is I just think we have, when we pull up the depth chart here, on offense, we need another receiver. We can get that pretty much anywhere. Like you said, we can get a Taj Washington late, Luke McCaffrey, someone, a Cornelius Johnson, even a Ryan Flournoy or something late. And the wide receiver is just stacked. When you look at the defensive line here, I just feel like we need one of those 2 spots to be upgraded. And maybe both, honestly. They want to win. They want to win around Caleb, and I know grabbing a wide receiver or a tackle could help that, but I think Eberflus and Poles are like, if we want to win, let's have a top 10 defense and not put all the pressure on Caleb Williams to be super great on offense right away. They're going to want to shore up this defense, I think.
I'm with you 100%. If we want to win now, you've got to shore up the defensive line. I think we're manageable with what you said on the offense for now. I think you're manageable with 2 wide receivers this year. The problem is when you come back to this pods discussion, that's what we're all worried about, the depth there, depth at tackle, because if someone gets injured, we're screwed. But here at the defensive interior, we don't have a 4th defensive interior with Justin Jones gone. We don't have a backup defensive end. If Montez Sweat or DeMarcus Walker go out, that doesn't put us in win now mode. So to win now, I really think you're right. I think we've got to nail the defensive end position more than anything else. Now, do they feel like they can do that in the first, or can they trade back? That's where you're at. So I don't know. We try to read the tea leaves. We try to see where Ryan Poles is. We try to see, what his mentality is. I think more and more people are realizing he's really keyed in on the defensive, this situation right here. Because for backups, you look at that, we don't have. There's one backup right now, Zach Pickens, and even he's not proven. He didn't really put any pressure. He did really well.
As much as I love Javon Dexter, he's not really proven as a starter. And I like Andrew Billings a lot too, but he's not a high upside guy. He's more of a average starter who's a 2-down guy, a great run plugger, but not going to give you much against as far as getting after the quarterback. So we just need more on this D line.
Yeah, we're not there yet. And that's the frustrating thing is I think, and that's my preface right now is we go into the season, everyone thinks we're win now, but we have a rookie quarterback and we're still 1 year away. This team, we only have 33 contracts signed through next year. So it's not like everything's magically done. There's going to be some key signings in this season for extensions. What's going to happen with Tevin Jenkins? Is he going to be healthy? Is he going to play all year because he's a beast? Is he going to earn a huge contract? Jack Sanborn, Khalil Herbert. Are we going to extend him? Are we going to draft more rookie running backs there? But then we have 9, 10 picks next year. There's still a lot of up in the air. This is not a complete rebuild at this point. We're still in the mix of it. And I think this year is a year they're going to be patient with a rookie quarterback. But we've got Keenan Allen for 1 year. I don't know. There's so many questions still, and it's. This will help us answer some of it on Thursday night. That'll help answer some of it, but I don't think we're completely there yet.
I think the biggest problem right now is we have more holes than we have draft picks. And
Yeah.
the majority, two of our biggest holes come at positions that you have to draft pretty high in the draft. When it comes to offensive tackle and defensive end, yes, you can find guys late at those positions, but it's a lot more rare than other positions. Whereas wide receiver, you can find late. You can find a center late. You can find a defensive tackle late. But right now, we only have 4 picks, and one of them is Caleb Williams, our quarterback. So after that, it's 3 picks. And after pick 9, if we don't trade down, it's just a long wait. So I'm still in favor of trading down from pick 9, even if we only get a 3rd rounder. I'm fine with 2 3rd rounders after that. If we really want to, we can move up from one of them. But we're not going to be able to address all the holes. I do think, while it's not win now, I think the expectations should be higher. I think this is a team that we should at least see better football than we've seen the last few years. We want to see a team that, while Caleb Williams doesn't have to come out and throw for 4,000 yards or be CJ Stroud,
Yes.
I do want to see improvements as a passer over what we saw from Justin Fields. Because when I look at the tape, the biggest thing I saw of Caleb that was better than Justin was his ability as a passer. So we want to see that. We don't want to see him having his highlights be scrambling plays. We want his highlights, even if we don't win a lot of games this year, we want Caleb's highlights to be special passes. And I think we want this passing offense to develop. Him building chemistry with DJ Moore, Keenan Allen, and whatever receiver you better draft polls. Well, that's what we want to see this year, is him developing that chemistry. And honestly, our offensive line. Justin Fields was here 3 years and never had the same offensive line, the same starting 5 for 3 straight games. Can we have some cohesiveness on that offensive line? That's a big thing too. And that's going to continue to be a problem. If it's not fixed, that's going to cause problems for Caleb Williams. And those are my biggest worries right now. How do you feel on those?
Yeah, and the more we talk through this, the whole point of this show is the draft preview. What are we going to do? The more you talk through it, and what you were just saying about where you can take players and potentially get the position of value for them, it just makes too much sense. Caleb's going 1. You have to have that high-value quarterback. Trade back a little bit, get an extra pick out of it, and then go defensive end with the 2nd pick, and then we can fill wide receiver, defensive tackle, tight end 3, center. We can fill all those things with later picks. So I think he ends up – my over-under, I'm going to say right now on picks, is 5.5. I'm going to say over 5.5. He's going to generate 6 picks at least, but those first ones will definitely be quarterback, then defensive end, and then if we get a 2nd rounder, I'm hoping Zach Frazier falls to us in the 2nd round. That would be my hope.
That would be probably one of my favorite things that happened in the draft. Zach Frazier is a killer, a guy who's a former wrestler, a center. I love it. And he's one of my favorite players in the draft. He's been overrated a bit or underrated a bit because of JPJ and how much I love JPJ. But it's just that is Zach Frazier is just right behind him. I like him that much. And his former wrestling background, I wish he would have been healthy at the Senior Bowl. He was a guy I was excited to see. And I actually went up and chased him down. He was going the tunnel. And I was like, hey. I was like, Zach, you're not practicing down here, and talk to him. And it was good to see him. I wish he would have practiced, because he's a guy I think could have built up a lot of that hype that JPJ got. But either one of those centers would be a dream for me. We haven't had a great center since Olin Kreutz. And I'm a person who think it's important on the offensive line to get a good center. While I don't think you have to draft one in the 1st round, we've been so bad there for so long. If you can get a top 30 player in round 2 because he's a center, hey, give up an extra pick for that. I'm 100% with that. And
I'm 100% down with that. And imagine teaming that up if you get Caleb Williams with his center for the next 4 years. I mean, we talk about Caleb with a wide receiver, having that cohesion with the center. Now, I'm still not opposed. We don't know. I actually was looking right before this show to try to see if there's any update on Connor Williams and his recovery. Can't find anything. They're keeping it pretty tight-lipped at this point. I think he's just focused on healing, which is good. Mm-hmm. They talked about initially when that injury happened that it would medically retire him. he came out and said, "No, I'm going to fight through this. I'm going to come back." But you haven't seen anything the last couple months on that. I'm still not opposed to bringing Connor Williams in at the end of the year, having him sign a 3 or 4 year deal with a little discount for this year, having conditions on it. Obviously, as you're healing, you got to get your medicals done. But that would be great too if we could fill that way. But that's a whole different topic.
Hey, that's another thing. If we don't get a center in the draft, that's always an option. But I think that's one where we know how Poles is. He's not going to sign him if he can't pass a physical. And I think it's clear that Connor Williams can't pass a physical right now. Hopefully, some point this summer, maybe he can. But I've heard he's not going to be back until mid to late in the season.
Yeah.
So I don't know at what point he'll be able to pass a physical. But that's something definitely keep an eye on at some point down the road. But when we're talking about all these wide receivers, right? Do you have a guy that you think is the best fit for the Bears at any point in the draft? Looking outside of the top 3 with Romo, Dunze, and Marv and them, is there a guy you think fits the Bears best? I can pull up a list of receivers if you want.
X receiver is what I want. And I really want a high point guy. And I know he doesn't fit perfectly, but I like the idea of Brennan Rice more and more. I know he's kind of getting discounted by everyone, but I'm liking the idea of already having that chemistry. And you saw Caleb Williams, and this is the thing I keep thinking back to. Caleb Williams at the Combine went to Brennan Rice's interview with the media, and he stood down with the media, and he started asking him questions. So there clearly is a bond there. There's a friendship there. And, people discount that, and they don't know how close those things are, and maybe they're just teammates. But he went there. He went to Brennan Rice's and was asking him questions and joking around like they're best friends. So I like that. And maybe he's not the best X receiver in the class. Obviously, he's not, because he's projected 3rd, 4th rounder. But to me, if you've already got that instant chemistry and you've got Chris Beatty there to help coach along, and you've got studs like Keenan Allen and DJ Moore to coach along, that's kind of like I like the idea of a later round guy who has such upside. And then on top of all that, you've got dad. I mean, Jerry Rice is not going away. Jerry Rice is in his corner. So, I mean, there's so much upside there. I think he's
I would give him time to develop too, because I mean, he's going to come in. He wouldn't have any pressure. He'd be the big X with DJ Moore and Keenan Allen taking attention away from him, and his quarterback that he's got chemistry with in college throwing him the ball. He's probably my favorite pick for number 75. I think another guy that fits the bill if Rice was gone, who offers a lot of the same similarities, would be Tez Walker, but he's a guy whose hands very questionable right now, and I would need him to get better at that. But he would have the similar thing, a lot of room to grow next to DJ Moore and Keenan Allen. But this wide receiver class is stacked, so I just want us to take a receiver. But you mentioned my guy there, Brendan Rice, is probably one of my favorites.
Well, his biggest knock right now is the separation, Brendan Rice. I mean, the only reason he's not
struggles to track the ball over his shoulder.
Yes,
I saw that a lot. And but other than that, he offers everything you want. I mean,
well, those two things. That's the reason he's not a fringe 1st round pick right now. That's the reason he's not where Ladd McConkey is, because he's built, he's tall, he's got a high vertical. Nothing wrong with him. Well, bring him into the Bears. Who better to teach him than Keenan Allen and DJ Moore? I mean, those two guys understand the football field, placement on the football field, how to manipulate receiver or defenders. I don't know. It makes too much sense, but they didn't bring him in for a top 30. I mean, I know that doesn't mean everything, but I'm looking at
the pro day. They did meet with him at his pro day. They had a meeting with him at USC and at the Combine. So that's good. I mean, you don't have to meet with guys 5 times. I know a lot of people look into that, but if you met with a guy at the Combine and at his pro day, and on top of that, I think they met with everyone at the Senior Bowl, and he was at the Senior Bowl too. So that means that's 3 times they've met with Brendan Rice this offseason. So I still think they could be very high on him. And at that point, if you've already met with him 3 times, if you're bringing him in for a 30 visit, you're just alerting everyone in the league how much you like him. So I do think
true. There is a lot of smoke and mirrors.
Mm-hmm.
There is a lot of smoke and mirrors. So they might have intentionally not brought him in. They could have done a virtual that we didn't know about. I mean, there could be some different behind the scenes things happening for sure.
And any receiver we get, they're going to be learning from Chris Beatty and DJ Moore and Keenan Allen, but he's going to have a 4th guy there, his dad, like you said, who can run all those things by. Like if one of those receivers is teaching him something stupid, he could ask his dad and run that by his dad. Nah, son, don't do that. Don't do anything smart. So I love Brendan Rice, and it's not just that his dad's Jerry Rice. I love a lot of the things he put on tape. He's a guy who, as USC coaches and Caleb Williams said it himself, I think he had a little bit better chemistry with Taj Washington, but the guy who would get open when he scrambles and he said he practiced it with Caleb, the scramble drills, he would find a way to get open. Wherever Caleb's running, he's running and trying to get parallel with them and trying to get open. And that's special, having a chemistry like that already built in.
So you've locked it down. We're taking Caleb. We're going to milk the Raiders because JJ's not off the board, where Jaden Daniels fell to 9, and they're going to trade up. So we're going to milk them, and we're going to get Jared Verse, and then we're going to get Zach Frazier in the second, and then we're going to get Brennan Rice in the third. So we've just figured out the draft. It's all done.
That's all I was gonna say. What's your predictions? If you had to, we'll end it like that. Let's going in. This is 2 days. We're recording this on Monday, releasing on Tuesday, so it'll be coming out 2 days before the draft. If you had to guess right now, what are your predictions for the draft?
I like what we just came up with. That sounds fantastic to me. Let's go Caleb, Jared Verse, Zach Frazier in the second because we milked the Raiders, Brennan Rice, and then I'm going to overreach, which I don't think is an overreach. I think other teams, I know we need tackle, but I really, really, really like Zach Zinter more than most people. I've liked him all off season.
Yeah.
I'm taking him at 122. I'm overreaching. I'm taking him at 122.
Yeah. Obviously, Caleb's pick number 1. I think our first round pick. Go ahead with what you were going to say, and then I'll say what I was.
No, I had nothing to do with it. I was going to say we can't bypass before we're done here. Your lighting is different. You're more lit in your room. You're in the studio you got there.
You said I looked like I was in a basement, so all I literally did was open the curtain halfway and just hung it over my exercise bike, and now the room's all lit up. And then
it's fantastic.
I took down my Justin Fields painting and put a Bears light up. All right, and then my obviously Caleb Williams going number 1. I think with our other first round pick, I do think we're going to trade down a couple spots, and then Jared Verse or Byron Murphy. And then third round, Brendan Rice is my guy. I think the other option could be Karen Megadije, the offensive tackle out of Yale. But Brendan Rice, if we can get him in round 3 after adding to the defensive line early, and then round 4, I'm gonna throw it a little different. I think a defensive tackle could happen there, but I'd like a center there. I'd like to grab Hunter Norzad out of Penn State. I think he could still be on the board. If Bo Limmer was still there or something, sure, but Hunter Norzad is one of my favorite sleeper prospects in the draft at center, and we need that center. We need a center.
Tanner Bortolini is kind of my sleeper for the 4th round.
I think he'll be gone at round 75, though. I don't think he'll be there 122. Okay. So if we're getting Brendan Rice, then I'll go Tanner. But hey, if we went Tanner Bortolini in round 3, though, hey, that's another guy to put on that list there at pick 75. Especially if I think it's more likely we get 2 third-rounders. So we get Brendan Rice and a Tanner.
Hey, we're milking the Raiders, man. We're going to milk someone because the 4th quarterback's going to be there.
That's what I want. A second-rounder is my dream for this draft. I honestly won't even care what we take in the first round if we get a second-round pick. But
let's make a pact here right now that whoever's taken with the first 2 picks, whether it's trade down or not, we're not upset about it at all.
I probably won't, unless it's a corner. Did you hear Ian Rappaport come out and say we're going to take a corner? Did you hear that?
Terry and Arnold. They throw the pick in. Terry and Arnold.
Ian Rappaport said that yesterday.
Yeah, it's ridiculous.
He said he believed the Bears could take Terry and Arnold or Quinyon Mitchell at 9. I was like,
that just goes to prove these guys aren't staying up on every team. They're flying by the seat of their pants. They don't have a clue.
They must think Kyler Gordon sucks. Yep.
Sorry.
Adam, always appreciate you joining the show, my man. We can't wait for the draft. It's my favorite time of the year. I will be hopping on your show live night one, because it's late at night, NFL draft. But look forward to that, guys. Adam, anything else you want to say?
Nope. Love chopping it up with you, Swifty. We got to do it more often. You got to quit bailing on me. We gotta make this a regular thing, man. People love it. I love it. It's fun. It's genuine. Talking football with my boys, and that's how it feels when I come on with you. So I love it. Let's keep it going.
Yep, awesome, man. And we'll do a 1, 2, 3, bear down. 1, 2, 3, bear down.
Bear down.
Let's go. My man. Hey, you actually playing down here?
No.
Okay, you're down here for the interviews?
Yeah.
I feel like you're one of the best centers in the class, man. And I was disappointed that you didn't get this opportunity to show out your talent down here. Are you doing any kind of individual work or just here for interviews?
Just individual work.
Individuals?
I can do everything on air. I'm not cleared yet for contact.
Oh, okay, man. Hey, I appreciate seeing you down here. Thanks for taking time to talk to me for a minute. Thank you, man.